Today I'll be continuing with my schedule discussion and point spread prediction videos. Today I'll be doing Oregon State. Oregon State's football program these past couple of years had gotten better after being awful for a long time. They had the year in 2022 where they got 10 wins for the first time in a really long time. And then in 2023, they had 8 wins. And now it looks like they're probably going to be going back to being horrible again. And that's just how it is, probably going to be. I'm not hating on Oregon State, but they made a coaching change, and not because they wanted to. They weren't able to get anybody good uh, to come over to be their head coach, and they have an almost completely different roster this year. They lost 20 of 22 starters from last season. They only have one starter on each side of the ball coming back, and I did see though they also get uh, their punter back from last season, and they I think lose their place kicker, but that's just not much coming back. And when you lose that many players, it's just almost impossible to be as good as you were the year before. Uh, and Oregon State, doesn't recruit great. And now this year they will be an independent, uh, but they've made a deal with the Mountain West Conference uh, to play at least six of their teams this year. And they play seven teams actually from that conference this year. And I do think, though, that Oregon State, after this season, will join a conference because I think they will need to be in a conference because in the future, playing six teams or more from the Mountain West Conference is always going to hurt their chances of making this 12-team playoff. Now, they have no chance of making it this year anyway, but I mean, in the future. Uh, and I think they'll probably join the Big 12 conference after this year because the SEC, I don't think, is going to want them. I know they've got 16 teams, uh, but they're not needing really any more strength added to their conference, and Oregon State can't really give them that right now. And the Big Ten, they've gotten up to 18 teams, and the ACC is now up to 17 teams, and the Big 12 this year will have 16. So I think they'll take both Oregon State and Washington State to move up to 18 teams. Because the ACC, if they took them both, they would be up to 19, and I don't think they'll want 19 teams because I'm pretty sure Oregon State and Washington State will join the same conference. And the Big Ten isn't going to want 20 teams, I don't think. That's just going to be too many. And you're probably not that familiar with the Mountain West Conference, and I'm not that familiar with it either, to be honest. So there's seven opponents from that conference this year are San Diego State, Colorado State, Nevada, UNLV, San Jose State, Air Force, and Boise State. And they'll play four teams from the Power Four. Three of them are teams that were conference opponents last year. Oregon, which is their rival, and then uh, California and Washington State, and then they do get one given win on their schedule against an FCS team, Idaho State, uh, and Oregon. There's no chance this year that Oregon State could win that game. it's going to be a big blowout, I think. It was a blowout last year when Oregon State was decent, and they're going to be a lot worse, I think. And Oregon, I think, is going to be even better this year than they were last year. And Oregon has got a really good head coach with Lanning, who is one of the youngest head coaches. So he's going to be around a long time. So I don't really see Oregon State beating Oregon again anytime soon. Mm, and Purdue, mm, mm, they are not very good, and it's a home game. Mm, so that's one that maybe Oregon State could get a win and uh, California on the road. You know, Cal is terrible, but mm, Oregon State, I think, is probably going to be just as bad this year. They could even be worse than California this year. Now, but California is not a tough place to play. They have like no home field advantage, but still, that's going to be a tough one for Oregon State to win. But they could. Uh, and then uh, Washington State beat them last year in a really close one. They only won by 3, and this year it's at Oregon State. But Washington State didn't even make a bowl game last year, and I haven't really looked at their roster yet, but I am pretty sure that they're not losing as much as Oregon State is, but they are losing their quarterback who is really good and was the only reason that they beat Oregon State last year. So uh, mm, that's one that Oregon State will have a good chance to get. Uh, and San Diego State and Colorado State, Nevada, UNLV, and San Jose State. Those are all games that I would think that Oregon State could probably win because they're still on the Power Four level, even though they're not in a conference right now. Uh, they should be better than all of those teams still. Now, Air Force and Boise State, those are going to be hard for them to win, especially on the road. Those are two of the best teams from the Mountain West Conference. I think there's a good chance that they'll both be better than Oregon State this year. Uh, but Oregon State, uh, even though they're, I don't think, going to have near as good of a team as they did last year, they might still be 8-4 because of the schedule. Uh, mm, you know, Colorado State did take Deion Sanders' clown show to overtime last year, but Oregon State was a lot better than Colorado last year, but this year they might not be much better than Deion Sanders' clown show. So that is one that they'll have to be careful in. Uh, and they get a week off before it, and they get their other week off before San Jose State. And now I'll move on to the point spread prediction. So if you want to see more about how I do these, you can watch my first video of these Ohio State. I explain all of it in that video. But games in the green are games where I think Oregon State will be favored to win by a blowout, which is 20 or more points. And there's one of those, Idaho State. And then games in the blue are games where I think Oregon State will be a double digit favorite at 10 to 19 points, and there's one of those, Nevada. And games in the purple are games where I think they'll be about a touchdown favorite, 6 to 9 points, and there's four of those: San Diego State, Colorado State, UNLV, and San Jose State. Uh, and then games in the pinker games where I think they'll be favored by about a field goal. So 1 to 5 points, and there's two of those at Purdue and Washington State. Uh, and then games in the gray are games where I think Oregon State will be an underdog by about a field goal. Uh, so 1 to 5 points, and there's three of those. California, Air Force, and Boise State. And games in the orange are games where I think Oregon State will be a double-digit underdog, but not a blowout underdog, so 10 to 19 points. And there's one of those, Oregon. Idaho State, Oregon State should be favored in that one by like 30 points, maybe a little bit more. Uh, and Nevada, they're not very good. So I think even on the road, Oregon State should be just good enough to uh, mm, uh, put that one in the blue. I think the spread in it'll be around 10 points. Mm, and San Diego State and Colorado State and UNLV and San Jose State. Right now, I'd say uh, the spread in all of those will probably be about 7. And Purdue, because it's a home game, I think Oregon State may be favored by about 3 in that game, but they would probably be an underdog even to Purdue if it was a road game. Uh, and uh, Washington State, I think Oregon State may be favored by a point or two in that one because it's a home game, but they'd be an underdog for sure in that one if it was a road game. Uh, and California, I think they'll be about a 3-point favorite over Oregon State because Cal gets it at home. I think Oregon State would probably be a small favorite if it was home for them. And then Air Force, that's a tough one. But I think on the road they may be favored by about a point in that game. Mm, but wouldn't be surprising if Oregon State was still favored because they're supposed to be better than Air Force. And the same with Boise State. I think they'll probably be favored by a point or two because it's at Boise State. Mm, and Oregon. So I think that this won't be close at all, and it will be a blowout. But I think probably because it's a rivalry and it's at Oregon State, Vegas won't quite have this spread at 20. It'll probably be like 17 or 18 or 19 points. And that will be it with this video. And please subscribe and thanks for watching. And I'll be back soon.